There is a small house in rural Nagano where an 84-year-old man still sets the table for dinner most nights, still walks to the corner shop for vegetables, still has a specific chair at the table that is understood, without anyone saying so, to be his. His daughter and son-in-law live with him. No one has ever had a formal conversation about taking care of him. Meanwhile, somewhere else right now, an adult child is sitting in a hallway outside a parent's rooms, exhausted, quietly resentful, having just had another conversation that started with good intentions and ended with the parent feeling like a problem to be managed, and the child feeling like an unpaid, unappreciated employee of their own family. Same basic situation, an aging parent, an adult child, a shared responsibility. Completely different emotional texture. What if the difference between these two households has almost nothing to do with how much care is actually being provided, and almost everything to do with 7 quiet habits that shape whether that care feels like respect or like burden? By the end of this video, you will understand exactly what those 7 habits are and why they can change the emotional weight of caregiving without changing the amount of caregiving itself. Before we walk through the habits themselves, we need to address an assumption most families carry into aging care without ever examining it. The assumption is this: as a parent becomes more dependent, decisions should shift increasingly to the adult child, since the child is now more capable, better informed, and more energetic. This sounds practical, but it creates a quiet, corrosive shift because the parent experiences this transfer of decision-making not as help, but as a slow erosion of their own standing in the family, even when every individual decision made on their behalf is objectively correct. The actual goal isn't optimizing every decision. It's preserving the parent's sense of continued relevance. This is the piece almost every caregiving guide quietly skips. The real Japanese term, Oyakoukou, filial devotion, understood not as a single dramatic act, but as an accumulation of small, ordinary gestures of attentiveness sustained over years. The practice, rather than treating care as a series of large interventions, medical decisions, living arrangements, it is treated as a continuous stream of small attentions. Noticing a parent seems cold and quietly bringing a blanket, remembering a small preference without being asked. The scientific validation. Gerontological research has found that older adults who receive frequent small gestures of attentiveness report significantly higher perceived dignity than those who receive infrequent but larger interventions, because dignity is built cumulatively through small signals of being noticed, not through occasional grand gestures. The second habit concerns how a parent's remaining capabilities are treated. The real Japanese term, yakuwari, role, the deliberate preservation of a specific task or responsibilities that remains clearly the parent's own, regardless of how small. The practice. A parent continues setting the table, tending a small garden bed, or managing a specific small task entirely on their own, even if it would be faster or easier for someone else to do it, because the task itself carries identity, not just function. The scientific validation, research on aging and self-concept, has found that the loss of role-based identity, having no task that is clearly yours, correlates more strongly with depressive symptoms in older adults than physical decline itself does, meaning preserving even a small role has outsized psychological protective value. The third habit is about how questions get asked, rather than decisions being announced. The real Japanese term, ukagau, to humbly inquire, used specifically when a younger or lower status person seeks the opinion of someone senior, regardless of the senior person's actual authority in the matter. The practice. Even when an adult child has effectively already decided something is necessary, a doctor's appointment, a change in medication, the parent is asked first in a form that genuinely allows for pushback, rather than informed after the fact. The scientific validation. Studies on perceived autonomy in older adults have found that being consulted, even about decisions where the outcome is largely predetermined, produces measurably better cooperation and lower resistance than being informed of a decision already made, because the act of being asked itself carries psychological weight independent of the outcome. The fourth habit involves how physical assistance is offered. The real Japanese term, sarigenaku, done as if it were nothing, casually and without drawing attention to the act of helping. The practice, a hand offered while descending stairs, a chair pulled out slightly, done in the same unremarkable tone as any other small courtesy, rather than performed with visible effort or announced concern that draws attention to the parent's frailty. The scientific validation. Research on assisted mobility in older adults has found that help delivered without emphasis on the need produces significantly less self-reported shame than help delivered with visible concern or announcement, because the visible concern itself, however well-intentioned, signals declined in a way the physical assistance alone does not. The fifth habit concerns the physical space a parent occupies within a shared household. The real Japanese term, ibasho, a place where one belongs, both physically and socially. The practice. A parent retains a specific chair, a specific spot in the house, understood as theirs by unspoken agreement, rather than having their space gradually reorganized around the convenience of others as their needs increase. The scientific validation. Environmental gerontology research has found that maintaining consistent, personally significant physical space is associated with lower rates of disorientation and higher reported sense of security in older adults, independent of the objective quality or size of that space. The sixth habit is about how a parent's history gets treated in daily conversation. The real Japanese term, mukashi banashi, old stories, specifically the deliberate practice of inviting and listening to a parent's stories from the past, rather than politely tolerating them. The practice. A parent's stories are asked for, not merely endured, treated as a resource of family history and identity, rather than repetitive background noise to be managed. The scientific validation. Narrative gerontology research has found that older adults who are actively invited to share life stories, rather than merely allowed to, show measurably higher scores on standardized measures of self-worth and life satisfaction, because active invitations signals that the story, and by extension the person, has ongoing value. The seventh and final habit is the quietest of all, and it concerns how the caregiving itself is discussed. The real Japanese term, okage-sama bada, thanks to you, a phrase used to attribute one's own well-being to the support of others, including, in this context, an aging parent's own past contributions. The practice. An adult child regularly and explicitly credits the parent's past sacrifices as the foundation of their present ability to help, rather than framing the current relationship as simply the child now repaying a debt or managing an obligation. The scientific validation. Family systems research has found that framing current care as continuity of mutual exchange rather than one-directional obligation correlates with lower caregiver burnout and higher parental satisfaction with the caregiving relationship because both parties experience the relationship as reciprocal rather than as debtor and creditor. As you've seen, making aging parents feel respected rather than burdensome has very little to do with the amount or quality of physical care being provided. It has to do with 7 quiet habits that preserve dignity alongside assistance. Accumulate small attentiveness through Oyakoukou. Preserve a specific role through yakuwari. Ask rather than announce through ukagau. Help without drawing attention through sarigenaku. Protect a consistent physical place through ibasho. Actively invite stories through mukashi banashi. And frame care as reciprocity through ukagau samade. None of it requires providing more care than you already are. It requires delivering that same care in a way that leaves dignity intact. If this changed the way you think about caring for an aging parent, please like this video and subscribe so we can continue unlocking this kind of practical Japanese wisdom together. Now, I want to hear from you. Which of these 7 habits do you think would matter most in your own family? Leave it in the comments below. Until the next video.